Oh. Wow, this does not like me. I gotta get rid of one of these. That'll help. Okay. Hey, YouTube Gunham here. I don't know what that was about. At any rate, I thought it was about time to show off another ship for the special fleet, the later fleet that's attached to the Paltek Super Heavy Battleship Carrier, or the Paltek Battleship. This, I believe, is something along the lines of the Vode An. That's that. Vode An is Mandalorian, meaning brothers all. So I thought I was going to have the Katarn Destroyer, which is basically the same size, but a little lag. So obviously this thing's just a heavily modified Vigil. The first you should notice is there's way more guns on this thing than the other. Second, that giant radar dish is kind of missing. Third, aren't those a pair of octuplet batteries sitting up there? Why, yes they are. Let's get into this, shall we? What does this thing have that the Vigil doesn't? Well, the Vigil had these three dual heavies. It had a couple guns there, couple guns there, couple missiles, and a couple other point defense guns. Like, I think there are 6 of those, a couple of missiles, and these 3 big dual heavy turbo laser turrets, and that was basically it. On the other hand, you now have this, which I forgot to change that. Whoops. Let me do that right now. You know me. Where is? I suppose I could use that. Certain models were removed because reasons. Oh wow, that is big. I'm gonna remove that if I yank that off. Dang it. Well, let me just do the one. Yeah, well, actually, now I think about it, it will make sense to boop. Just do that. Oh wait, is there a dumbass? That would be so yep. Okay, let's pull that back up and yeah. I don't really need this, but I just yeah. Boop, just looks better. Okay. So back to what I was getting at. I still need to change that because I suck. So there's the Vagabond, which is a heavily upgraded Nebulon B frigate. Again, the model that I base this off of, my EAW Nebulon B, the neck is too thick. I just want a walkway between the two. So it's supposed to be like half the size it is, which means it would only be effectively, the neck would only be like, stop it, excuse me, this, but if it were a circle instead of instead of a giant square. So these necks are huge in comparison. And then there's this. So what does this have? Well, besides the fact that I'm still saying in my version of Star Wars canon that the Nebulon B, as it was supposed to have a modular system, and this one doesn't. It actually sacrifices modular ability to add additional armor and a better hangar and a bunch of other stuff. The hangar is supposed to be a modular setup. With that, it comes with it. This, same thing. It has a hangar that comes with it. So there's that. So what are the two ships like? What is their role in the fleet? The Vagabond is more of an escort. It is meant more to stay nearby the heavy ship, and with its large array of turbo lasers, it's supposed to be able to deal with corvettes and frigates and smaller destroyers that get in nice and close while still packing a punch against fighters. It's also supposed to have extremely heavy shielding to stop enemy weapons from getting in. This, on the other hand, is more like a glass cannon. Yet not quite. It's not so glassy, but it's definitely quite cannony. This does stick with the idea of green being for turbo lasers. So where beforehand there was only those 3 dual heavies, now, just on the top here, there's 14 turbo lasers additionally. But there's also this back here, an additional 6. 20 turbo lasers just on the top of the ship? Well, hold on. That's the top of the ship. Yeah, there's a few extra on the bottom. Not too many, just 10, 5 on each side. But, you know, just 10 there, 20 there, plus the dual heavy. So it's very clearly a top-heavy oriented ship. But that is more of how it should be. For anti-capital warfare, the top is the way to go. Anti-fighter, it's more of the bottom, although the top's not a slouch. Obviously, also on the top, a pair of octuplet batteries taken from an Imperial 2. So yeah, 20 turbo laser turrets, 3 dual heavies, 2 octuplets. That's a lot. No ion cannons. No ion cannons. That's it. Now, I don't know how many laser cannons for point defense that other one was supposed to have, but as you can see, there's 17 up in the front there and 12 in the back here. That's 29 laser cannons for the top of the ship. But again, there's also the bottom. And the bottom, I mean, there's these 6 here, so that's 12. There's those 4. There's also these 4 packed in there. So, you know, there's 28 additional guns on the bottom. 29 up top, 28 on the bottom. I mean, it does seem like the bottom's not good, doing so good. But then you have rotary Gatling blasters. There's only these 2 up top. You take a look at the rest of the top, there weren't any. There were a couple more there. I switched those out for missiles. There were a couple of them here. But not on bottom. On bottom, there's 4. And I was very close to making it 6, but I decided it might actually be a little overpowered, so I decided not to. But, most crucially, the bottom of the ship is meant to deal with fighters because of missiles against fighters, which are these missiles launchers, not those. We'll get to those in a minute. These missile launchers are for dealing with enemy fighters. So there's 2 on the top. That's it. What about the bottom? 8 anti-fighter surface-to-air missile ship defense concussion missile launcher turrets. Reloadable, of course. Oh, oops. I didn't want to show that yet. Oh well. So, there's that. However, the ship also has a lot more forward firepower. I mean, all these turbo lasers up top and down below is going to hurt. And the addition of 2 octuplets is really going to hurt. But these... Oh, I forgot. There's these 3 guns as well. I completely forgot about that. My bad. They were hiding up there. So it wasn't 28 on the bottom, it's 31. Definitely the bottom is meant to kill enemy fighters. The top is meant for capital. Definitely for capital. What about these things? Mass drivers. These are supposed to be mass drivers. Kind of like a Mac gun from Halo. You have to point the entire ship directly at it. But this thing, whereas the Nebulon B and the Vagabond are relatively slow, but pretty tough, as long as you don't shoot them in the neck. Well, that's the case for the Nebulon B. The Vagabond, you shoot in the neck. The neck's actually one of the strongest points of the ship per neck, but it has 2 of them. So, yeah. With this thing's very fast and very maneuverable. It has very lightweight armor compared to the Vagabond. The Vode An does actually have comparable shielding, but that's per layer. The Vode An only has a single layer of shields, while the Vagabond has 2 shield layers. Obviously, the Vode An is a much smaller target. At least, or, I mean, you take a look at it. They're not. The Vagabond's actually not very big like that, and this kind of is. But from this side, on the other hand, a Vagabond. Okay, actually, a Vagabond is still small, and this is still big. So technically, the profile is more, but it also isn't. The shields of a ship are more in a bubble. I mean, they would probably go in a little bit there. So you could shoot more area around and still hit the shields. So I think that would hurt. And I also forgot about this gun here. My bad. I suck. You know what? Now I think about it. Overpowered? Yeah. My stuff's overpowered anyways. So, yeah, here I am adding more guns, because why not? Boop. Okay, so there's 3 rotary Gatling blasters up top, and now there's a total of 6 on the bottom. Because F you to the fighters. But yes, mass drivers. These are more... Because here's the thing. You take a look at the mass driver of the Republic gunship, you know, the Lardy from the Attack of the Clones, it fires those rockets. Are those really mass drivers with rockets? Shouldn't the rockets be going really quickly like they do here on Earth? Or are those more flying bombs that have a little bitty motor just to maintain the speed that the mass driver launches them at? Compared to other mass drivers like these, which actually fire things at insanely high velocities, like Mach 10 or Mach 20 or something like that. You know, some insanely high velocity in comparison. And that's what these are, except for they're much faster. They have a little bit of a reload, but they can fire in bursts. They are similar to Halo. They can fire a projectile at like 100,000 miles an hour, and they can fire in 3-round bursts per gun. But there's 6 guns. So they can fire 18 rounds, each one at around 100,000 miles an hour. And each projectile isn't actually very small. They're not too big, not like on the battleship, but they're not small either. And they may have some fragmentation capability with a armor-piercing warhead up front. So it is like battleship guns back in the day. It'd fire this armor-piercing warhead that would actually be like an arrow. You take a look at armor-piercing discarding sable ammunition. What is actually this little bitty arrow, and around it is something that helps it accelerate. Imagine something like that, but it doesn't actually discard its sable. The sable is the fragmentation. So what you have is this arrow that goes through the target, and the fragmentation does have small explosive charges to send it out, turning that sable bit into basically like a grenade, sending shrapnel at high velocity in a cone around 20 degrees off from the path of the projectile, so a 40-degree total arc. If that happens just after it pierces the front armor of your ship, it's going to hurt per round. And let's say these are 6-inch diameter projectiles. That's not very small. And each one can fire a 3-round burst, and there's 6 of them. Yeah, that's not going to hurt at all. And magnetic shields, like most ships in Star Wars are equipped with, they go right through. Thermobaric shields, on the other hand, are rare, and planetary shields are just really strong. But thermobaric shields might offer some resistance, but not against something that fast, and not with so many of them. They could overwhelm and pierce a small hole before the shields have time to compensate. So there is that. And that is, I believe, how octuplets should work. Now, other additions, like I said, a hangar. There is a hangar which isn't terribly large, but at least it's here. And yes, I don't have too much because then I have to alter so much, but it is a double-decker. Whereas over here, although it goes back substantially farther, it's a single-decker. So actually, if you take a look at this and then take a look at this hangar is about the same. It just goes up. Now, this would permit larger craft, and I do think it should go up one more. It's just I want to make sure to have a door. So, bear that in mind. This should have a larger door, height-wise, than that. Where that could only really launch X-Wings and Y-Wings, this could launch small shuttlecraft and attack gunboats, things like that. So it doesn't go deep, but it does go high. And yeah, there was supposed to be 2 hydrogen units and a cargo unit here. I had to yank around. But, like I said, engines. Because engines is the only other difference. A few engines here instead of that thing that was sticking out, which I think was sensors. Yeah, vent sensors, a lot of that's not be necessary. So there's a few additional engines here, but the single biggest change is the addition of a 5th primary engine. So there are 6 secondary engines and a 5th primary engine instead of just the 4. There's the one in the middle now, greatly increasing the thrust. But there is another addition. As this is supposed to just stop here and have a big gap, this gap's been filled in. And as you can see, on this thing, these are missiles, not torpedoes. So these are missiles. These are heavy concussion missiles. The one thing that is a complaint by a lot of people is, why don't missiles be on the sides of the ship? Because missiles turn. They always seem to have missiles in the front. Why do they have them on the side? Why don't they? Because they have more room. This does answer that, but it also answers having a little get well soon package on the back of the boat. So as it flies by, the way it will work, using its insane speed, it fly towards you, smack you around with the mass drivers, and then use its heavy cannons while it's below you, so you're above it, and really ruin your day. Slaughter any fighters that get anywhere near the thing, and then as it flies away, cackling with laughter, it leaves you a get well soon package in the form of a bunch of missiles right up your ass. Because what if it's behind you? What's the back of most capital ships, or I don't know, all capital ships? It's a bunch of engines. So this thing's going to zip right by something like a Star Destroyer, and then just fire a bunch of missiles right into your engines after it's done a bunch of damage to the front and to the sides of the ship. So this is an escort ship. It's meant to protect the bigger ships, like the Rasputin Star Destroyers and the battleship itself. This is an attack ship. It sacrifices armor for speed. It does have way more firepower. But again, doing that, it does sacrifice some mission versatility. It doesn't have any ion cannons. And it has all these missiles, but no torpedoes. It has a ton of anti-fighter and anti-capital missiles, but doesn't have any torpedoes, which should do more. It is meant to get in close. Now, I know what you're thinking. What about the Katarn Destroyer? Isn't that similar? Yes and no. Because the Vode An is meant to work in close proximity to larger ships. It's supposed to be, say, in front of a big cruiser. So you can shoot at one of these things, but use its speed and maneuverability to be charging towards you, and then at the last minute, it actually doesn't get behind you, it peels off before it actually hits you. Like how fighters do. Maybe it actually does slightly go behind you to deliver its missile payload, but then it zips away. So it wouldn't actually get behind you and then keep going. And it is meant to stay near some big cruiser. The Katarn Assault Destroyer, on the other hand, is meant to operate on the enemy's flank, not on the front line. It's meant to flank the enemy. It is more than twice as fast as this thing. It has slightly stronger shields. Similar armor, but it's a much smaller profile. Let's see if I can pull that up. Okay. Look at the profile. You see that? I mean, this is really going to hurt my CPU. Okay. Yeah, look at the profile of the two. I mean, the Katarn Destroyer is much longer, but much narrower, but much wider as well. Is it as tall? Taller? Maybe a little bit. But that's the thing. Its weapons are more to attack an enemy to the front, not to the sides. And although it does have a large amount of anti-fighter weapons, its combination of these are turbo lasers in this thing. Turbo lasers and heavy cannons up front, forward-firing mass drivers, ion cannons, and lots of turbo lasers on top and below make it good against larger ships than itself without. Oh, don't forget the additional cannons there. It's definitely meant to hit an enemy more in front and keep going, because while the Vode An does sacrifice some forward momentum for the sake of additional maneuverability, the Katarn Destroyer sacrifices maneuverability for raw forward thrust, for raw speed. It is not maneuverable. This is maneuverable, not too quick. This is neither. This is more of a tank. This is to plug the hole near friendly cruisers and to soften up some enemies. Like, the enemy forward formation is usually anti-fighter vessels. This would go and soften them up and then pull back before the enemy larger cruisers really hit it too much. Though it may shoot at it a little bit while it pulls back. And then you would have the escorts just in front of the big cruiser, while the destroyer would flank the enemy and try to hit the sides or the rear of the big enemy cruisers of the enemy fleet, try to hit those support ships, or just zip right on by, going right down the throat with a wolf pack of them, just a pack of them, just zipping on by, really, really ruining their day. The Vode An is meant to lead a charge. It's meant to lead a fleet formation, softening up enemy fighters and small, fast enemy attack ships like their own destroyers, while really harassing them, because once the enemy destroyer gets in, they're not going to be as fast as this thing, actually, because it is so much more advanced. So this would chase down enemy destroyers. And even if they are faster, they're not faster than one of these things unless they go to light speed. Unless they activate their hyperdrive, they're not going to be faster than a mass driver. And if they hit it in the butt, no engines left, they can then shoot it with the guns and tear it apart. So it's meant to deal with things like that. While the Katarn Destroyer is meant to go into the enemy fleet and cause mayhem, the Vode An frigate is meant to attack enemies' forward formation, then go back so the big cruisers can duke it out. And it would guard the big cruisers by enemies that break through the line and get behind the cruisers, whereas the Vagabond acts more like a shield. You know, the shield and the sword. That's what these two are. The Vagabond is a tank with its 2 shield layers instead of just 1. It would take so much beating. The Vode An can't take anywhere near as much beating, but it dishes it out big time. That's the thing. The Vagabond is meant to just sit in its spot next to the cruiser and slaughter enemies that try to stay near the big cruiser, and to hurt enemy cruisers in support with its own big cruisers, or the battleship. While the Vode An harasses enemies that get behind it, but doesn't go too far away. The shield and the sword. The one is slow but tough, the other is fast but kind of weak in that department. The one has all-round pretty decent weaponry. The other has that same stuff, but just more of it. But then again, this has more versatility than this. So there's that. So yeah, the Vode An. Next up, the Mogar. Once I build it.